Hello and welcome to this introductory video on Mathematica. So the first part of your first Mathematica assignment is just going to be to replicate everything I do under the title of Welcome to Mathematica. Now, there are two different versions of Mathematica. There is the desktop version, which is actually downloaded onto your computer. You can use it without internet access. And then there's the online version, which most of you probably have. So this is going to operate inside of your web browser. Now, some things are going to look a little bit different, but you can do everything we need to do in this class using both versions. All right. So starting out, we've got different types of text. So this title is written in the type of text of title, and then this will be your introduction to Mathematica is written in plain text. Now I can insert text and in fact I can insert anything if I move my cursor below a cell and I see this horizontal bar. That means I can input something. By pressing on this plus, I can choose a new cell type. And right now I want to insert text. I don't quite want it to be plain text, but I want it to be a new section. And so I'm going to click Other Styles of Text, and then let's go for a section. I want to insert a section, and I'm going to call this section Freeform Input. That is the first thing we will talk about. Now I can do two different things here. If I press Enter, look at this vertical line on the right. If I press Enter, all I'm doing is lengthening this cell, and I can put a line underneath. Now if I press Enter, then what I write underneath must be the exact same type of text as above, but I don't want to do that. And so I'm going to backspace, and then I'm going to press the down arrow. If I press the down arrow, it's going to create a new cell. I can see how cells are organized by looking at the side here. So cells are organized by putting them in these vertical brackets. I can look at the hierarchy here. So Welcome to Mathematica is my title. Underneath, I have this plain text, and then underneath that I have Freeform Input. Now I can hide everything under this title if I place my cursor on this larger bar and double click. These arrows tell me that I have something hidden, and so does this little triangle underneath that bar. I can just double click that to re-expand. Now since I want to actually type in Freeform Input and I don't want to type in another section, I'm going to press the down arrow. To use Freeform Input, I can do two things. I can either press this plus sign and click Freeform Input, or what's easier is that I can just press an equal sign. This automatically tells me that I'm going to input what's called Freeform Input. Now Freeform Input is nice because you can perform calculations without actually knowing the Mathematica code. So let's say, for example, that I want to, integrate something. Let's say I want to integrate the cosine of 2x. When I press Enter, if you saw that for a second, this little vertical bar is going to turn black to show me that it's calculating. Because this is a pretty simple calculation, it ended up giving us the output pretty quickly. The integral of the cosine of 2x is 1/2 times the sine of 2x. Notice that Mathematica isn't going to give us this constant of integration, but we know that there's really a plus c here. When I'm in Freeform Input, I've got these suggestions. So if I press that arrow, I can show the suggestions bar. I can press Simplify to write this in a different form, and then I can press Trig Reduce to get it back into its original form. Now let's say I want to delete a cell. If I simply delete the text, it deletes the text, but notice that cell remains. So to actually delete a cell, and since I want to delete both this input and this output, I'm going to just highlight this cell by clicking on it and press the delete key on my keyboard. I know which input is associated with which output because the inputs and outputs are labeled by number. Now I can press wherever I see this horizontal cursor, I can press anywhere to put another input, but these numbers help us to know which input actually went first chronologically, so which we typed in first. And you can see that those numbers are pretty high because I created this activity below before doing this tutorial. Some other things I can do is, and this is certainly not everything I can do, I can expand a binomial. So if I expand, I don't know, x plus 2 cubed, I can expand that binomial. I can also simplify it, get it back to this form, or let's see what simplify does. Simplify will get it back to this form. I'm assuming that factoring this would also get it back to that form. Great. Yep, I can factor and simplify. All right, something else I can do, well then I know that I can graph this. So if I wanted to see what this looks like, I can plot this. I can plot that curve. Let's do something a little bit more complicated. Let's maybe find the slope of a tangent line to this curve at any given point. So I can do that in Freeform Input too. Let's see what Mathematica does with this. Find the slope of the tangent line at, let's say, x equals 2 of this function here. So of y equals the quantity 2 plus x cubed. And this will give me the slope. Now you notice that took a little while. So this is the slope of the tangent line at x equals 2 of this function. Now I'm looking here and I see that, well, it doesn't look like 48, but look at my y scale because Mathematica automatically assigned that scale. All right, now if something's taking too long, let me delete this output and run it again so I can show you. If something is taking too long and you see this vertical bar turn black and it won't continue, it means this is loading. And I can go up to the top of my page and I've got these options, and I know you can't see them in this video, but I've got these options all the way at the top of my page. One of them is evaluation, and if I click on evaluation, you'll see this abort evaluation, which will only work if a cell is currently evaluating. The other thing I can do is I can press that Control or Command key to abort that evaluation. All right. Now, you'll notice that we have here what looks like a different style of text when we write this freeform input. Now, this will only show up in the desktop version of Mathematica. If you're in the online version, you'll just see this text and then the output. You won't see this down here, but this is Mathematica's code, and don't worry if you have the online version. We're going to give you all of the code that you need. So this brings us to our next type of text. So I'm going to choose a new cell type and let's add another section. And now this is going to be called Wolfram Language Input. Wolfram Language Input. All right. Now, freeform text is great because you don't have to know the actual Mathematica code, but it does limit you a little bit because there are a lot of things. I mean, Mathematica can do a lot. There's going to be a lot that we can't exactly put in text. And so for what we're doing mostly in this course using Mathematica, we're actually going to be using Mathematica code. And so I can write code. Now I can do different things. Let me talk about the shortcuts a little bit. I can either write this plus, choose new cell type, and choose Wolfram Language Input. This is the default. So if I just go down a cell and arrow down, automatically this is going to be the default. You'll see that this is Wolfram Language Input. For some of the shortcuts, you can press Command or Control 7 to change this to plain text. And then I can just choose Command or Control 9 to switch this to Wolfram Language Input. All right, so now that we're here, we're starting off with some of the few main ideas of Wolfram Language Input. So first of all functions begin with a capital letter. So if I type in, for example, the cosine of pi over 2, Mathematica's not going to know what to do with that. Instead, I need to type in the capital cosine of capital pi over 2. you'll notice that these words became black when they represented Mathematica functions rather than just a series of letters. The other thing I know is that all arguments are contained in brackets, so instead of parentheses, I'm going to replace these with square brackets. Third main idea, if I just press enter, I'm just going down and continuing on that cell. If I just press down, I'm starting a new cell, but now in Wolfram Language Input, to actually evaluate this cell, I need to place my cursor in that cell and press Shift Enter. This is going to give me the cosine of pi over 2. Next, lists and intervals are contained in curly brackets. So if I want to plot something, let's also take this time to talk about the plot function. I can type in plot. I know it starts with a capital letter, so it must be one of my functions, and then open up some brackets. If I'm unsure about that function's input, then I can, and sometimes it's a little finicky, place my cursor over that function and press this double down arrow, and this will tell me, let's try that again, this will tell me what kind of inputs I need. So this tells me I need a function, comma, and then I need the x range in brackets, and so that's what I'm going to do. So if I want to plot, and this is for plotting in 2 dimensions, y equals x squared, I'm going to plot the function x squared, and exponent is shown by that caret, and then press a comma, and then in curly brackets, my x interval is going to go from, I don't know, maybe let's make it -2 to +2. I'm going to enclose in brackets. Now, you'll notice that this pink bracket, this bracket has turned pink. If I go and backspace a little bit, you'll notice that this curly bracket is pink. So this will kind of guide you in what closing brackets you need. So whatever brackets I open, I need to close. So I'm going to close this in with a curly bracket and then close with a parentheses. And so let's press Shift Enter to actually find that plot. All right. Now, if I didn't enclose something correctly, let's say that I missed a curly bracket, and I press Shift Enter, I'm going to get these red brackets here that tell me that I'm either missing something or have too much of something as far as brackets go. The other thing is if I enclose this curly bracket and I write example here and I press Shift Enter, Mathematica doesn't know what to do with this third argument. So it's going to say options expected beyond position 2. What that means is that there's a third thing inside of this plot that Mathematica doesn't know what to do with. We're remembering that arguments are are separated by commas. So there are 3 arguments here, and we only wanted 2 inside the plot function. The other thing we can do is I can right-click on this plot, and I can see this Get Help. This is actually helpful. It might take a minute, but what it will do is it will pull up a guide on how the plot function works. So if I scroll down here, then I can actually see some examples. So I see what I'm looking for, and this was the same thing if we press that double arrow. I can see what I'm looking for inside of the plot function. I've got some different variations depending on what type of function I've got, and because some of these can be a little bit difficult to follow, we can go down and see some basic examples of how this actually works, of what kind of inputs will give us a certain output. So that is super helpful when using new functions. All right, so let's fix this plot. Okay. The next idea, and we said that both intervals are contained in curly brackets and so are lists. So let's find an example of a list. So what if I want to find a mean of a list of numbers? I can type in mean, open up a bracket because it's a function, and now I want to find a mean of a list. To show I want to find a mean of a list, I'm now going to open up those curly brackets and say, let's say I want to find the mean of 1, 3, 2, 6, and 7. So this is my list. I'm going to enclose it in the correct brackets and then press Shift Enter and I get the mean. Now Mathematica is automatically going to give me this mean in terms of a simplified fraction, but what if I want this in terms of a decimal? Well, one thing I can do to show that I want this in terms of a decimal is I can press N, open up a bracket, and this is just going to give me the decimal form of whatever this value is, and then rather than retyping all of this, well, I can either type in that number, so I can type in 19/5 and press Shift Enter, and I get this in the form of a decimal. I can also press N, open up those brackets, and copy and paste my original input by I'm just using my keyboard shortcuts here, Control C and Control V, and close those brackets. I get the same thing. Third thing I can do is I can have that same input. and then if I just press put a decimal anywhere in one of these numbers, it's going to tell me that I want my answer in terms of a decimal. So if I just make this a 1 point, and I can put a 1.0, I can just add even a decimal there and press Shift Enter. It's also going to give me my final answer in the form of a fraction. I can also specify, in this case, 19/5 is actually 3.8, but what if I have some type of irrational number like pi? So what if I want to find pi in decimal form? I can press N, open up that bracket, and then pi with a capital P means it's that function pi, and press Shift Enter. It automatically shows 5 digits after the decimal place. I can also specify the number of digits I want it to show. So what if I wanted to show 12 digits? Press Shift Enter, and I'm showing 12 digits. So next, let's talk about assigning variables. So if I type in any kind of lowercase letter, let's say X, this is going to be a dark blue color, and I can assign X a value. Let's say that X equals 2. When I press Shift Enter, it's going to assign the value X of 2. So now whenever I type in X, Mathematica is going to be thinking, okay, well that's 2. So now I can type in, I don't know, I can find X cubed, for example, and it's going to give me 2 cubed, which is 8. Let's say now I no longer want X to be equal to 2. I can type in clear X. Press Shift Enter. Notice that this variable has turned blue again, meaning that it is now unassigned. Now X is just X. Now if I evaluate X cubed, meaning if I place my cursor inside of this cell and press Shift Enter, now I just get X cubed. This really shows us the benefits of having these inputs and outputs labeled, because this shows me the order. So the order in which I evaluated these cells is, so 351, I let X be equal to 2. There's no 352 because that's when I said that X cubed was equal to 8 when X was equal to 2. So this ended up getting overridden. So in our order of things, then I cleared X, and then 354, then I allowed X to be cubed again once I had cleared X. So that just became an X cubed. All right. So next we can actually solve equations using Mathematica as well, using the solve function. So using the solve function, we're going to input our actual equation followed by the variable that we want to solve for. So if I want to solve, let's solve a quadratic equation, x squared plus x minus 6. I need inside of here, I need a double equal sign. So I need equals equals 0. So I need that double equal sign if I actually want to solve an equation. And then I'm going to put a comma, and then I want to solve for x. So now I need to solve for x. I can press Shift Enter. Now you'll notice that these x's turn a slightly different color inside of this solve equation. So press Shift Enter, and it tells me that the solutions are -3 and 2. And notice our output, our solutions are in these curly brackets, which shows that they can be written as a list. Our solutions of -3 and +2. If I want to define a function in terms of 2 variables or in terms of multiple arguments in general, I'm going to use a slightly different notation. So let's say I want to define a function f, and it's going to be a function of x and y. I need to write that variable x and then an underscore, which I can type by pressing shift and then the minus sign on my keyboard, comma, y underscore, and close those brackets. And then I need a colon, not a semicolon, a colon, and then an equal sign. And then let me allow this function to be x times y. Now, if I just type in x, y, you'll notice that this is blue, that these x and y's are blue. The problem with this is that if I don't press a space or an asterisk between two variables, it thinks that x, y is a new function, or a new variable, I'm sorry. So if I press a space, I'll see that these have turned, I think that's a greenish color, and so this shows that my function of x and y is equal to x times y. I'll have the same effect if I place an asterisk between x and y and place a space bar just to show that. So if I press shift enter, then I've defined that function. All right, I'm good to go. Now I can do something with it. Now if I want to multiply, let's say I want to multiply 2 and 3, I can just now type in f of 2 and 3, and this will give me 6. This will plug those values into that function. Now, so far I've been defining a variable as one letter. I've really just been using x and y, but I can name a variable anything. If I start with a lowercase letter, I can name a variable giraffes. I've used giraffes before. I can name a variable giraffes, and I can say that the giraffes equals 3. And now I can find 4 times giraffes. And this will give me 12. If I want to suppress the output of something, so let's say that I want to assign giraffes to 3, or I want to assign the number 3 to giraffes, but I don't just want to have an output of 3, I can press a semicolon. That'll suppress the output, but if I press shift enter on 4 giraffes, it's still assigning giraffes as 3. So a semicolon suppresses that output. Now, 2 major ideas from Calculus 1 that I want to talk about are finding the derivative and the integral. The derivative is the d function, just d, not derivative, just d. Let's say I want to find the derivative of 3x squared. Now, with this derivative function, I need a second argument, and I want to know what I'm finding this derivative with respect to. So the variable I'm finding this derivative with respect to is x. So that's going to need to go in that second argument there, and I find that that derivative is 6x. Let's say then I want to integrate that. So what if I want to get back to my original function? I can integrate using that integrate function. I'm integrating 6x, and again I need to write that I'm integrating with respect to x. So this will take me back to that 3x squared. All right, so this is it for the first part of your assignment. So again, what you're doing for this assignment is you're just copying all of these inputs, ideally as you watch the video so you can learn what they mean. You're just copying all of these inputs into your own notebook file, just doing everything I've done here. Okay. So now for the second part of this assignment, we're going to scroll down under integration, and we've just got a little bit of information for you about the integrate function. I think the hardest part of Mathematica is certain things with the notation. So we've got comments on kind of how to create an indefinite, definite integral, and then just some of the other ways that we can write radicals and natural logs and constants like e and pi and things like that. And so what you're going to do is, as you go through this, whenever you see Mathematica code, now I can tell it's Mathematica code because I have this little input right here, and since I've switched over to the Mathematica online version, I have this little kind of space here, and this says that when I opened up this new document, I haven't yet computed that input. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my cursor on that line and press shift enter, and then it's going to compute that code, and now I'll have a number. I'll have an in and output number for the order of how we computed that. All right, so you're going to go through this, read the little paragraphs, just press shift enter next to all of the code, And this should give you really everything you need to do this assignment. So this is going to be your task. You're going to find the following. You're really just going to answer these questions by using the integrate function in Mathematica. And you can just do them down here. So I can press my cursor down here and I can start with number 1. I can label this because I can add, remember I can add text, plain text, and say that this is question 1. And then I can start my integral. Just remember, you can't have plain text and code on the same line, so you'll need to go down to the next line if you don't want a little 1 that might do something weird with the code. So we're just going to use the integrate function. The first two are pretty plain and simple integration. We just want to get you comfortable with that integrate function in Mathematica. For questions 3 through 5, you'll notice that we're going to need to actually find these integrals first. So for 3, for example, we're finding the area between these curves. Well, you're going to have to find the integral that is going to give you that area. And you're going to want to probably do this on a separate piece of paper. Now, you don't need to actually show that work or upload that paper. All we're looking for in this assignment is just 5 different integrals. So we're going to look for you using the integrate function 5 times to kind of find the final answer for all of these questions. So some extra work is going to be done on paper. If you are having any issues, you can always send me your Mathematica assignment and I can kind of help you to troubleshoot, so don't feel like you're alone on this. When you are done, let's just kind of shift our screen up here. When you are done with this, what you're going to do is you're going to press File and you're going to download this file. Now when you download it to your computer, you might have to name it. You can rename this assignment. And the thing is, you're not going to actually be able to open it on your computer unless you have the desktop version. If you go into your Finder or your Files and you try to open this assignment, it's going to say that you don't have the proper application to open this assignment, and that is okay. That doesn't mean there was a file error, but I have the desktop version of Mathematica, and I can access that on my end. All right, so that is your task. You're going to press File and Download, and that is going to be what you're going to upload to D2L. You know it's the right file if you see this little .nb at the end of your file. That means it's a notebook file. So that's what we want, not a PDF of the assignment, because I want to actually be able to kind of go into your assignment and troubleshoot. All right, and that is it. Thank you.